Face of the enemy. Turns out this whole time, Troi has been a Romulan spy.
Troi wakes up in darkness and can't get the computer to turn on the lights, so it's just a typical morning on the Enterprise is what I thought.
She stumbles over to a mirror, only to find out that she is a Romulan.
Romulan Subcommander Nivek walks in and tells Troi that she is on the Romulan warbird Kazara.
Troi remembers she was at a psychology seminar, but was attacked when she went back to her room. And Nivek tells her she's Major Rakal, a member of the Tal Shi'ar, which is basically the Romulan secret police.
And which made me think of the Shi'ar Empire. I was hoping this would be a crossover with X-Men.
I kept calling her Major Recall.
Nivek doesn't completely explain her circumstances, but gives her orders for what to say when she meets Commander Torith. And he says if she doesn't do as he says, she will be killed, and that she can use her empathic abilities to know that he is not lying.
And it's funny that the Romulans use knowledge of her empathic abilities more than the crew of the Enterprise.
She goes to the bridge to meet Torith, who I immediately recognized as being played by Carolyn Seymour, who we've already seen twice on this show, as different characters.
One time even as another Romulan. When asked about what their mission is, Troi says it's all classified. Torith is upset that she's being kept in the dark, including about what their cargo is.
And Torith says she doesn't like the Tal Shi'ar and tries to challenge Troi, but Troi shuts her ass down,
directing them to their destination. Meanwhile, the Enterprise is picking up a Starfleet officer, Desev, who defected to the Romulans 20 years ago.
And who Riker immediately puts under arrest for treason. And I also noticed that Worf had a new haircut.
Yeah, okay. Desev says he needs to talk to Picard
because he has a message from Spock telling him to meet a ship in the same area as Troi and to bring its cargo back to Federation space.
Picard is skeptical due to Desev being a defector, but Desev says he's become disillusioned with the Romulans and decided to come back.
So Picard decides to go along with things for now. Meanwhile, Troi goes to the cargo bay, where Nivek shows her that the cargo is living Romulans in stasis.
They're high-ranking government officials who are defecting to support Spock's dissident movement. And the hope is that they can establish channels to help other Romulans who want to defect get out.
And I would think they would be worried about cameras or microphones in the cargo bay.
Especially on a Romulan ship where they're suspicious of everybody all the time.
Nivek tells her that the real Rakal is dead, and they felt they needed a Starfleet officer in case things go wrong, but doesn't give details.
He says they'll eventually rendezvous with a freighter, she'll take the cargo there, and eventually that freighter will go into Starfleet territory.
They go to dinner, where there is tension when Torith tries to question Troi about her political opinions. But we're less than halfway through the episode, so she manages to bluff her way through.
It was a pretty good conversation, though.
Although the bluffing was a little implausible.
They're interrupted by news of a freighter on an intercept course, and the captain of the freighter tells them they're ready to receive the cargo, but Troi senses he's lying, and he won't actually follow through.
Nivek fires on the ship and blows it up, and when Torith asks why he did that, he says Rakal told him to.
Torith gets pissed, and Troi gets in her face, tells her to cloak the ship and hold position.
The Enterprise gets to the area where they were supposed to meet the ship, and when they find nothing there, Picard questions Desev, whose name turns out to be pronounced Deseva, showing that Riker was pronouncing his name wrong before.
Well, I'm going to keep saying it the way I've been saying it. Desev admits that his message didn't come directly from Spock, and Worf is ready to blast this dude out into space.
But Deseva sticks to his story and says that based on the type of ship they were supposed to meet, it couldn't have gone too far away, so they decide to go look for it.
Back on the warbird, Troi confronts Nivek about destroying the freighter and what their plan could possibly be now.
He tells Troi that she has to order Torith to head for a Starfleet base, and that they can get through the defense net using Troi's access codes. So does every Starfleet officer know those access codes?
Her rank and the knowledge of what her rank entails seems to fluctuate. Torith scoffs at the idea, but Troi uses her position of authority to force her, and as they prepare to leave, the Enterprise enters the area.
Torith wants to leave before they are detected, and Troi fails to give her a convincing reason not to.
Back on the Enterprise, Data detects the debris of the freighter and evidence that it was destroyed by Romulans recently.
Troi wants to contact the Enterprise, but Nivek says there's no way to do that without giving themselves away, so she suggests finding a way to let the Enterprise track them, and gives Nivek an ultimatum. He will either do so, or she will tell Torith that she discovered he was a traitor.
He admits they can alter the output of their cloaking device, but the Enterprise might not detect it, while the rest of the Romulans might, so it's pretty risky.
But Data does end up intermittently picking it up, and DeSeva says it could be a cloaked Romulan ship, so they decide to follow it.
Torith is surprised that the Enterprise is following them, even though they're cloaked, and decides to pass super close, and if the Enterprise moves to avoid a collision, she'll open fire. The Enterprise wonders why the Romulans are on a collision course, and back away.
And Torith orders an attack, but Troi overrides her, and says that anyone who disobeys will be punished by the Tal Shi'ar along with their families. And she orders decloaking and hails the Enterprise.
Picard plays along, and agrees to lower shields in order to beam Troi aboard.
And when the communication ends, Picard and Riker both express surprise at the situation. Troi orders Nivek to fire on the Enterprise, and Worf says they sustained a direct hit, but at negligible power.
And it turns out, Troi actually hit a transport beam inside an otherwise harmless disruptor blast.
And the 3 Romulan dissidents materialize on the bridge.
Torith discovers the ruse, and Nivek ends up getting zapped. It was pretty cool.
And there wasn't even a puddle of cellular matter left behind to mark his passing. Torith disarms Troi and tries to question her, apparently forgetting all about the Enterprise during this whole scene.
She says Troi will eventually be executed, but as soon as they start to cloak to leave, their shields go down, and Worf is able to beam Troi back over.
Beverly gives Troi her old face back, and Picard tells her that everything worked out great.
And future rescue operations can now take place. Face of the enemy. Overall,
this was an interesting idea for an episode. The idea to have Troi disguised as a Romulan, especially without knowledge of what was happening, is pretty dumb on the surface, and even dumber if you think about it. The fact that Nivek and the other dissidents thought it was better to go that route instead of either using someone who willingly agreed to do it, or even to at least explain the plan to Troi when she wakes up instead of just trying to shove her out on the bridge, was pretty stupid. But the show made the reasoning behind it just plausible enough that I was still willing to go along with it. I still wish they would focus on taking a logical approach instead of trying so hard to amp up the drama. It made some of the scenes a little bit harder to go along with, but it wasn't too bad. I liked getting a glimpse of some Romulan politics when Torith and Troi were arguing, and I liked that they went back to Spock and his activities. Carolyn Seymour didn't do a bad job, but it was a bit distracting to have her pop up again in yet another role. There were some things that stretched credibility too much and took me out of the episode, but I did like the tension that was there on the Romulan ship the whole time. Even if I didn't love this episode, I am glad they made it, and I thought the good outweighed the bad. I give it a B-.
I give it a B. We finally get a Troi episode that's pretty dang good.
That's a good point. They didn't treat Troi like she was stupid or she wasn't crying the whole time.
It's only taken 6 seasons. I also like that we got a good look inside the Romulans and their mindset. Although I thought Desev was a weird casting choice, he was almost presented as a famous actor cameo. But the only thing I've ever seen Barry Lynch in was Ticks. Maybe some more background information on his character would have helped. I thought Carolyn Seymour was great, and I agree it was a little distracting to see her again as a different Romulan. And I wanted some more gross Romulan food during that dinner scene. They have a lot to compete with all the junk Riker was eating back in A Matter of Honor. And one thing that stood out to me was everything that was happening to Troi. She was at a psychology conference. Did she not keep in contact with the crew on the Enterprise? Or other people at the conference? It was a little suspicious how someone in such a notable position would just disappear and no one would say anything to anybody.
I'm glad it at least happened when she was not on the Enterprise, because that would have been really stupid, and we've seen that happen before.
But I imagine at this conference, being so important, she would have had seminars to even present herself. But I also like this episode. We're in a string of pretty good ones. Except for Aquiel. I didn't really like that one. I know you did. We all make mistakes.
You've made that joke before, and it was always a mistake.
Thanks for watching.